Sonic the Hedgehog is blue for one reason, and it has nothing to do with speed. In 1990, Sega tasked designers Yuji Naka, Naoto Oshima, and Hirokazu Yasuhara with building a mascot that could go head-to-head with Mario and replace the company's aging character, Alex Kidd. Oshima's team submitted several designs before landing on a hedgehog. There was an armadillo in the running too, a design that would later evolve into Mighty the Armadillo. There was a dog. There was even a rabbit whose extendable ears would later show up reused on other characters. And there was a stocky round man in pajamas modeled loosely on Theodore Roosevelt, a rejected design that eventually became the basis for Dr. Robotnik. None of those won. The Hedgehog did, initially sketched under the working name Mr. Needlemouse, because his design let him attack simply by rolling into a ball, a mechanic Sega's programmers could build an entire game engine around. Sonic's very first appearance anywhere wasn't even in his own game. Before Sonic the Hedgehog launched in June 1991, a tiny cardboard cutout of the character showed up as a hanging air freshener dangling from the rearview mirror in Rad Mobile, a Sega arcade racing game released the year before, a blink and you'll miss it cameo that predates his actual starring role by months. Once Oshima had his hedgehog, he needed a color, and the choice came from somewhere completely unglamorous. Sega's own logo was already a specific cobalt blue, so the new mascot got matched to the company's own branding. Nobody explained it in the game itself, it was just the way things were. The rest of Sonic's design came from equally unusual places. His red shoes were built from a mashup of Santa Claus's boots and Michael Jackson's, with the red and white contrast lifted straight from the cover of Jackson's 1987 album Bad. His personality, that cocky, impatient, get-it-done attitude, was modeled on then-Governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton. Oshima even gave Sonic a human girlfriend in early concepts, a character named Madonna after the singer, meant to be a damsel Sonic would rescue, before the idea was scrapped entirely. Blue wasn't chosen to represent speed. Speed was built around the blue. That blue turned out to be the one part of Sonic's design nobody was ever willing to touch, even during the character's roughest redesign in decades. When Paramount released the first trailer for the 2019 live-action film, the CGI Sonic on screen had human-style teeth, small deep-set eyes, and unsettlingly human-like proportions, a design so widely mocked online that director Jeff Fowler publicly promised changes within days, using the hashtag #GottaFixFast. The studio delayed the film 3 months from November 2019 to Valentine's Day 2020 and brought in Sega's own animation director Tyson Hesse to lead the redo. The eyes got bigger, the teeth mostly disappeared, the legs got less human. But the blue never moved. Through every version of that design, good and infamous alike, it stayed exactly the shade Sega had chosen to match its own logo 3 decades earlier. But here's where the color stops being a marketing decision and starts being a family trait. Decades later, in a completely different medium. Sonic's father, Jules Hedgehog, introduced in the Archie comics, is blue too, a close enough sky blue shade that the resemblance is instant the moment the two are drawn side by side. Jules served in the Acorn Kingdom Army during the Great War, and during that war he was fatally injured, wounds severe enough that survival meant becoming something new entirely. His own brother, the scientist Sir Charles Hedgehog, had just finished building his newest invention, the roboticizer, and Jules became the very first Mobian in history to go through it, saving his life at the cost of never being fully organic again. That's the exception folded into his color. Jules isn't just sky blue anymore. As a Robian, his first scheme shifted to sky blue and silver, a round mechanical head layered with pointed quills, blue where his sun is blue, silver where the machine took over. Sonic's blue was chosen to match a company logo drawn up by a design team racing a deadline. Jules's blue was chosen for him by circumstance, then permanently fused to steel by his own brother's technology. 2 hedgehogs, 1 shade of blue, and 2 completely different reasons for wearing it. Neither reason lasted forever either. Following a 2013 continuity overhaul at Archie Comics known as the Super Genesis Wave, Sega mandated that Sonic's family be removed from the ongoing story entirely, and Jules' blue fur, silver Robian plating, and all was written out of canon along with his wife. The company that built Sonic's blue to match its own logo eventually decided the Hedgehog didn't need a family to go with it. Hit the like and subscribe button to see more videos like this. Leave a comment on your favorite Hedgehog color. Let's get back into the video. Pink. Pink shows up on 2 hedgehogs in this franchise, separated by nearly a decade of development and 2 entirely different origin stories, and it means something different on each of them. Amy Rose actually started life under a different name entirely. She debuted in a 1992 Sonic manga written by Kenji Terada as a character called Rosie the Rascal, and when she made her first video game appearance the following year in Sonic CD, she was written in as an 8-year-old hedgehog with a crush on Sonic, kidnapped by the newly introduced villain Metal Sonic and used as bait. Sonic saved her after a race through Stardust Speedway, and Amy responded to her rescue by declaring herself his self-proclaimed girlfriend, a role she'd chase for years to come. For most of the 90s, her pink fur matched exactly what she was written as: soft, romantic, defined by someone else's story. That started changing once the games did. Amy picked up the Pico Pico hammer, first swinging it in Sonic the Fighters, a weapon nearly as tall as she is, and by Sonic Adventure she'd aged up 4 years and become a full-time member of the main cast, eventually leading her own group, Team Rose, alongside Cream the Rabbit and Big the Cat in Sonic Heroes. In Sonic Adventure 2, she was the one who rescued a captured Sonic instead of the other way around, and famously asked him to marry her afterward, a proposal he politely declined. By the time Sonic Frontiers rolled around, Amy had shifted further still, into something closer to emotionally mature and independent, a hedgehog whose goals had finally stopped orbiting somebody else. The pink stayed through all of it. The meaning behind it didn't. That evolution paid off with the fanbase directly. On one official Sega popularity poll, Amy placed 5th overall among the entire cast, making her the single most popular female character in the franchise's history. Amy is set to make her live-action movie debut in Sonic the Hedgehog 4, voiced by Kristen Bell, still wearing the same shade that first appeared on a hedgehog nicknamed the Rascal. Now compare that to Sonia the Hedgehog, a fuchsia, almost eggplant dark pink that separates her instantly from Amy despite the surface similarity. Sonia exists in a completely different corner of the franchise, the Sonic Underground animated series, where she's the middle sibling in a set of triplets alongside Sonic and their brother Manic. According to the show's own mythology, an ancient prophet called the Oracle of Delphius foretold that their mother, Queen Alenina, and her 3 children would one day form a ruling council of 4 and end Dr. Robotnik's tyranny over Mobius. To protect that prophecy from Robotnik, who sent SWAT bots after the newborn triplets the moment he heard about them, Alina separated her children as infants and gave each one a golden medallion inscribed with musical notes, the only clue to their forgotten past. Sonia's medallion doubles as a keyboard capable of throwing up smoke cover and transforms into a laser rifle in combat. She grew up raised by an aristocratic family, and it shows in everything about her. The posture, the diction, the instinct to plan before she leaps. The show's own internal rule maps color directly onto personality, and pink, on Sonia, means poised, a little status conscious, the family's built-in mediator whenever Sonic's impulsiveness collides with Manic's street-hardened skepticism. But here's the twist. Sonia isn't soft just because she's pink. She's remarkably strong, capable of denting metal, trained in martial arts with a signature move that involves spinning herself into a literal drill. Her aristocratic upbringing didn't stop her from crossing species lines when it came to romance either, with on-again relationships across the show's run involving Knuckles the Echidna, a lion named Cyrus, and a mink named Bartleby, none of which slowed down her role as the family's steadiest head. 2 pink hedgehogs, one raised on a hero's obsession and eventually outgrowing it, one raised on ballroom etiquette and eventually proving it hid a weapon underneath, both wearing a color that promised softness and delivered force instead. Black and red. Shadow the Hedgehog is black with red markings, and depending on which version of the franchise you're watching, the story behind that color changes completely, though the black itself never once meant heroic. In the games, Shadow was created by Professor Gerald Robotnik aboard the space colony Ark as part of a secret initiative called Project Shadow, an effort to build the ultimate life form capable of granting immortality and doubling as a military weapon for the government. He wasn't born. He was engineered, in part from a sample of alien DNA supplied by the entity Black Doom, a bargain Gerald struck specifically to perfect Shadow's creation, and that alien blood is why the red streaks exist at all, threaded through fur that would otherwise be solid black. During his time on the Ark, Shadow grew close to Gerald's ailing granddaughter, Maria Robotnik, treating her like a sister, watching the Earth with her from a window neither of them could reach. Then the government's military force, GUN, raided the station, deemed the project a threat, and killed Maria in the crossfire. The live-action films tell a different version of the same core idea. In 2024's Sonic the Hedgehog 3, Shadow's origin is instead a meteorite that crash lands in Oklahoma in 1974, seized by the US military and experimented on by Gerald Robotnik at a GUN research facility under a commander named Captain Walters. Shadow still befriends Maria in this version, still loses her in an accidental explosion tied to Gerald's own experiments, and is still sealed away afterward, deemed too dangerous to release and too valuable to destroy. Keanu Reeves voices him in that film, a role confirmed after Shadow was teased in the post-credits scene of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, standing in a research facility on Prison Island. Whichever version you're watching, the rule Shadow's color sets up stays the same, and so does the exception. Black, in this franchise, reads as danger, distance, a warning label stitched into fur. Shadow spent his early appearances living up to exactly that read, driven by grief that curdled into a desire to make humanity pay for what happened to Maria. But the black never stayed a villain's color for long. Shadow's story became one of the series' rare, genuine explorations of grief and redemption, a hedgehog choosing over and over not to become the weapon he was built to be. When he taps into a super state using the Chaos Emeralds, that black fur burns away entirely into gold, the one moment his color fully drops the warning label. That grief is also why Shadow spent years afterward gravitating toward two other outsiders instead of Sonic's circle. In Sonic Heroes, treasure hunter Rouge the Bat broke into one of Eggman's bases searching for a rumored fortune, and instead found Shadow sealed in a stasis pod, amnesiac and unaware of who he even was. Freeing him accidentally activated E-123 Omega, a discarded Eggman robot built specifically to contain Shadow if he ever escaped, and the two nearly destroyed each other before Rouge talked them down and proposed they team up to hunt Eggman together. That partnership became Team Dark, and unlike Sonic's group of lifelong friends, it was built entirely out of convenience between an amnesiac weapon, a jewel thief working government angles, and a robot with a grudge, three outsiders who happened to want the same doctor's head. That struggle got an entire game built around it in 2005, simply titled Shadow the Hedgehog, a third-person shooter that broke from the series' usual platforming to let the player decide who Shadow actually was. Set after Sonic Heroes, with Shadow suffering amnesia and caught in a three-way war between GUN, Doctor, Eggman's forces, and an invading alien race called the Black Arms. The game tracked every choice the player made across its levels and funneled them toward one of 10 different endings. From Shadow deciding to destroy the entire planet to Shadow choosing to protect it, with a true ending only unlocked after seeing enough of the others. It remains the only mainline Sonic game built entirely around a branching morality system, and it exists specifically because a hedgehog colored like a warning label needed a story mechanic that let players prove or disprove that warning for themselves. Shadow returns in Sonic the Hedgehog 4, releasing in March 2027, still voiced by Reeves, still black, still marked with red, still working through what it means to be built for one purpose and choosing another. White and silver. Silver the Hedgehog is exactly what his name promises. A silver, almost white hedgehog with a patch of pale fur circling his chest and neck, gold eyes cutting sharply against all that pale color. He debuted in Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, and his backstory drew direct inspiration from a specific source outside the franchise entirely, the character Trunks from the Dragon Ball manga, another time traveler carrying the weight of a ruined future on his shoulders. Silver's opening narration in that game says everything his color needs to. His world was devastated before he was born, a harsh, bleak place burned into permanent darkness by an unkillable fire entity called Iblis, the Flames of Disaster. Silver grew up in that ruin alongside Blaze the Cat, never knowing a version of his world that wasn't on fire, watching cities that had once been prosperous reduced to ash under a sky that never let sunlight through. Together, he and Blaze fought Iblis over and over, only to watch it regenerate every single time no matter how thoroughly they destroyed it. Until a mysterious time-traveling figure named Mephiles the Dark offered them a shortcut. Go back and eliminate the person responsible for releasing Iblis in the first place, someone Mi-Files called the Iblis Trigger. Silver took the deal. He was sent to the past believing Sonic was that trigger, arriving with one singular mission that put him directly at odds with the very hero everyone else in this list treats as the baseline. His power doesn't come from speed at all. It's psychokinesis, the ability to move objects and even people using nothing but concentrated will, considered completely ordinary technology where he's from. And here's the detail worth sitting with. Every other hedgehog on this list is defined by running. Silver barely runs. He floats, lifts, hurls debris through the air while everyone else around him sprints past, and his color reinforces that distance from the pack, pale and almost ghostly next to Sonic's blue or Shadow's black. It's appropriate for a hedgehog who technically shouldn't exist yet, walking around in an era that predates his own birth by 2 centuries, fighting to erase the exact devastated future he came from. He went on to become a recurring rival across Sonic Rivals, Sonic Generations, and Team Sonic Racing, always defined by that same tension between 2 eras. IDW Publishing's ongoing comic series, running since 2018, gave that same premise a second devastated future to fix. Silver arrived from a timeline choking under the Eggman Empire's near-total conquest of the planet, joined the Resistance fighting to overthrow it, and only returned home once Eggman's forces had finally been defeated in the comic's own version of the Sonic Forces storyline. When he got there, his own era had changed so completely that everyone he'd once known was simply gone, leaving behind nothing but water and scattered metallic plant life. That's the cost baked into every version of this character. Fixing the past doesn't guarantee the future he left waiting for him will still be recognizable or even survivable once he gets back to it. Silver isn't Silver because it looks striking next to the rest of the cast. He's Silver because he was never meant to be standing in this timeline in the first place. Green. Green shows up on 2 hedgehogs, and on both of them, it marks a transformation forced by circumstance rather than chosen outright. Manic the Hedgehog is the youngest triplet in Sonic Underground, bound by the same Oracle of Delphius prophecy as his sister Sonia, carrying his own golden medallion that transforms into a drum kit, capable of triggering earthquakes and deflecting laser fire in combat. But his path to that medallion looked nothing like his siblings. Sonic grew up in an average home. Sonia grew up in luxury. Manic was left on a doorstep in the slums as an infant, his basket stolen before anyone even realized there was a baby inside it, and he was raised instead by a head thief named Feral, trained as a pickpocket working the sewers and streets of Robotropolis alongside other young street urchins. That upbringing shows in everything about him. Shaggier quills than his siblings, a fanny pack stuffed with lockpicks alongside his drumsticks, a laid-back attitude built from years of surviving purely on instinct. The show's color logic maps Green onto exactly that, the most relaxed member of the group, the one least likely to charge in without a plan, calm because panic never once helped him growing up. Now compare that to Scourge the Hedgehog, who used to be blue. Before he had his current name, he was Anti-Sonic, sometimes called Evil Sonic, a Mobian counterpart who looked almost exactly like his heroic double. Blue fur, identical build, distinguishable mainly by a leather jacket and a pair of vintage sunglasses. Then came the rule-breaking moment. During a failed attempt to steal the Master Emerald, the Guardian Lock struck him while he was drawing on the Emerald's energy, and the resulting chaos reaction permanently altered his fur, turning it green, his eyes shifting color in the process. He took a new name to match: Scourge. That green palette wasn't invented from scratch by the comics artists either. It was based on an actual visual glitch in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, a corrupted color swap that turned Sonic's sprite green with black highlights a bug players had nicknamed Ashura years before Scourge existed as a character. Sega's own broken code became a supervillain's official color scheme. Once green, Scourge conquered his home world of Moebius within days, renamed his old gang the Anti-Freedom Fighters into the Suppression Squad, and crowned his girlfriend Fiona Fox as his queen and second in command. He led a second crew too, the Destructics, and when the Suppression Squad eventually mutinied against him and he was defeated and thrown into the No Zone's zone jail, it was Fiona who orchestrated his prison break, having herself and the Destructics arrested on purpose just to get close enough to break him out. 2 green hedgehogs, one green because he was left to grow up wild and unsupervised on the streets, one green because a Guardian's punch finally stripped away a disguise built on looking exactly like somebody else. Manic never actually got to find out how his own story ended. Sonic Underground ran for exactly one season, 40 episodes total, and was cancelled before the show's central prophecy, the reunion of the whole royal family as the Council of Four, ever got to pay off on screen. The show closes without Queen Alina ever being found. Green, in that light, reads a little differently in hindsight. The color of a hedgehog, whose entire arc was permanently interrupted mid-search, still out there chasing a resolution the writers never got the chance to give him. Gold. Gold isn't really any single hedgehog's color, it's a color three of them borrow, briefly and under specific conditions. And it always means the same thing. Someone has just pushed past their own limits. Supersonic debuted in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the very first sequel, and the transformation works the same basic way ever since. Collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds, gather 50 rings, and jump, and Sonic's fur burns from blue to a striking golden yellow, his eyes shift from green to red, and his quills, which normally sweep backward, float straight upward as if gravity had stopped applying to him personally. In that first game, the transformation had no impact on the story at all. It just unlocked the good ending. Later games gave it weight, invincibility, flight, drastically increased speed, and a ring counter that ticks down every second as the fee for holding on to that much power, a built-in expiration date on being unstoppable. Here's the detail that makes Gold worth its own entry rather than just a footnote on Sonic's page. It isn't exclusive to him. Shadow can access the exact same transformation, becoming Super Shadow, his black and red fur burning away into that identical gold, a hedgehog built as a weapon briefly wearing the same color as the world's fastest hero. Silver can do it too, becoming Super Silver, his pale silver-white fur overtaken by the same golden glow. All three of them reach that state together during the Solaris incident from Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, standing side by side as Super Sonic, Super Shadow, and Super Silver, to bring down Solaris, the fused, time-devouring combination of Iblis and Mephiles that threatened to consume all of history at once. 3 hedgehogs whose default colors couldn't be more different, blue, black, and silver, all converging on the exact same shade of gold the instant they tap into the full power of the Chaos Emeralds. Gold doesn't belong to any one of them, it belongs to the emeralds themselves, and for as long as the rings hold out, it's on loan. There's even a version of the transformation that abandons gold entirely for something stranger. In Sonic 3 and Knuckles, collecting all 7 Super Emeralds, enhanced versions of the regular Chaos Emeralds obtained through an entirely separate set of special stages, unlocks a Hyper State instead of a Super one. Hypersonic looks almost identical to his golden counterpart, same raised quills, same invincibility, but instead of one steady color, his entire body flashes rapidly through pink, sky blue, lime green, yellow, white, and violet, cycling through the same palette as the emeralds powering him. According to Sonic team producer Takashi Iizuka, there's no clean way to fit that transformation into the series' ongoing story anymore, which is part of why Hypersonic has never reappeared outside that one 1994 game. Gold, at least, keeps showing up. Every hedgehog that's touched it, blue, black, or silver, gets pulled toward the exact same shade the instant the emeralds take over. The Rainbow Flash was a one-time miracle. The gold is the rule. Purple and lavender. Purple shows up on 2 hedgehogs too, and one of them is somebody already on this list wearing a color he only borrows for a few pages at a time. When Scourge the Hedgehog needs to go all out, he doesn't reach for Chaos Emeralds the way Sonic does. Moebius has its own version of them, called Anarchy Barrel, and using one embedded in his own throne, Scourge transforms into Super Scourge to fight off a combined assault from Sonic, Amy, Shadow, Silver, and several other allies who decided he'd finally become too dangerous to ignore. In that state, his quills point upward and his irises turn red, mirroring Supersonic's transformation beat for beat, but the fur underneath doesn't turn gold. It turns purple, with his sclera going black and even his jacket and boots shifting color, the only super transformation in the comics' history at that point to change a character's clothing along with their fur. Series writer Ian Flynn has said the choice was deliberate, meant to distinguish Scourge's power from Sonic's rather than just recolor the same trick. And concept art shows the design went through 4 different versions before landing on purple specifically. It's a temporary color, gone the instant the Anarchy Barrel's power drains out of him, which it does violently, leaving Scourge defenseless enough that Sonic was able to trick him into powering down and capture him on the spot. Compare that flash of borrowed purple to a hedgehog who's worn the color as her actual identity for decades. Bernadette Hedgehog's color depends entirely on which comic issue you're holding, and that inconsistency tells its own story better than a settled shade ever could. Most commonly, she's drawn with indigo or lavender fur, blue eyes, and a small tuft of blonde hair on her forehead, but across her run in the Archie comics, her shade shifted between blue and purple depending on the colorist working that particular issue, sometimes changing from one printing to the next. She's Sonic's mother, a former student of the scientist Nate Morgan alongside her future husband Jules, and an agent of King Acorn's special forces during the Great War. Then Robotnik's takeover happened and Bernadette was roboticized, her body converted into a mindless robotic servant for years, her personality and memories buried entirely under his control. While roboticized, her design shifted again, rendered blue with pink hair and stark white-backed eyes, then in later reappearances given silver hair and black-backed eyes instead. A visual inconsistency baked directly into the character by the trauma of what had been done to her. She was eventually freed of Robotnik's control with help from a being called the Bem, and in the years that followed, her hair color alone shifted from white to blue, and finally settled on blonde across a run of issues before her personality fully stabilized. When her free will was restored for good, she stepped into a role Sonic had effectively lived without for most of his life, an actual mother, present and capable of homemaking after years spent as a hollow servant. The reunion wasn't smooth. Sir Charles had kept Bernadette and Jules' existence hidden from Sonic entirely, worried that Robotnik could use the knowledge of living parents against him in a fight. So, by the time Sonic actually met his mother and father face to face, he initially struggled to accept that the roboticized couple standing in front of him were really his parents at all. He eventually did, and later presented them with wedding bands crafted out of power rings, a gift that turned out to protect the couple's free will years afterward, when a version of Dr. Eggman arrived from another dimension, looking to enslave the local Robian population all over again. Here's the detail that closes this whole list out. In one particular issue, Bernadette was drawn so inconsistently that she was mistaken for Amy Rose entirely, colored pink to match, complete with a red dress and Amy's signature headband and boot stripes, before being corrected back to her usual purple in later printings. A mother whose fur couldn't settle any more than her son's chaotic life could, indigo, lavender, blue, briefly even pink by accident, every shade of it a side effect of a franchise that kept reinventing her faster than it ever let her simply be one color. Which hedgehog's color do you think tells the most interesting story? Drop it in the comments.